Hello, my name is Gareth Davies. I'm a teacher trainer and storyteller. In this video, we're going to look at how to use stories online with our secondary students, both in synchronous learning environments and in asynchronous situations. Stories are great ways to encourage curiosity, critical thinking, creativity, and citizenship in the classroom, as well as providing language input and enjoyment. But we need to make sure we select our stories well and have activities that encourage the students to engage with the story, whether in live synchronous lessons or in asynchronous learning. And that's what we're going to look at in this session today. Let me tell you a quick story that we can then look at how we would use it in the online classroom. This story is called The Elephant and the Kingfisher. One day, an elephant was walking down the road, swinging its trunk back and forth happily, and it noticed something on the road up ahead. What do you think it was? As it got closer, the elephant saw that it was a small kingfisher lying in the road on its back with its legs up in the air. What do you think it was doing there? "What are you doing down there?" the elephant asked. "Well, I heard the sky was going to fall in today, so I'm trying to hold it up," the kingfisher said. How do you think the elephant responded to this? Well, the elephant laughed and laughed and laughed, its trunk flying through the air. "You think you can hold up the sky with those little legs?" the elephant asked. "Well, at least I'm doing something," the kingfisher replied. I hope you enjoyed that story. One of the beauties of storytelling is that the stories we choose to tell can have a linguistic value, but also a societal value too. The stories we tell can carry a message for the students, which we either highlight openly or just allow the students to absorb themselves. In times of crisis, those messages and meanings can be helpful to students to deal with any anxiety and stress that they might be feeling. It's for this reason that most of the tales I choose to tell in the classroom are positive stories, funny stories, stories that show how characters overcome problems or react to change. The kingfisher was faced with a problem and was trying to solve it. So the first thing to look for when telling a story is the message that that story carries. Now, I'm a professional storyteller. I go into schools and tell stories to children of all ages. Something I know from experience is that no matter how good a story is, if it's too long, the listener will start to fidget and get bored. So when I tell stories live, I try to keep them under 10 minutes, maybe between 5 and 10 minutes. When I tell a story via video link, it's even harder to keep the students' concentration. So maybe I'll only tell a story that's 1, 2, possibly 3 minutes long. That means sometimes I need to split up a story and tell it over 2 or 3 lessons. But there are plenty of prediction and memory activities that I can do if I choose to split up a story. When I tell a story live, I always have audience participation. With younger learners, this is actions, repetition, call and response. With older ones, it might be questions or getting them to ask questions or encouraging them to predict what's coming next. You can't do this as easily via a video link, but you can still include questions in the storytelling. If you're performing live, allow students to answer the questions in the chat box. If you're recording the story, ask rhetorical questions like I did, and then pause to allow the students to use their imagination and predict a little part of the story. After I've told the story, I try to avoid comprehension check questions. If I want to find out if the students have understood, I might do some different things. These are some things I do in a live classroom setting, but work just as well online. In this example, the students have to say what order the events happened. Online, I give them some time to think about it and then tell them to put their order into the chat box. Then I'll turn on some microphones and ask students to justify their answer. Another activity you can do is ask students to write 2 names on a piece of paper of 2 characters, one on one side and one on the other. Then say some statements and the students have to hold up who the statement applies to. These are the kind of questions I might use. And you can see that these questions start with checking general understanding, but then move into checking a more personal understanding of the story. A very simple way to follow up a story is to ask the students to think of the moral of the story. Again, I'll give the students some time to think about this and then have them type it in the chat box. And then I'll call on different students to justify their answers. I'll also ask them to comment on each other's ideas in the chat box. Remember, their ideas might be different from yours, so don't look for a right answer, look for good answers. You could also do this asynchronously by setting this as a written or spoken homework, which brings me to activities that students can do offline. Now, these activities could be done online, but I think that they work probably better offline. Firstly, you could ask the students to record themselves telling the story back. This gives them a chance to practice English in a safe environment. Secondly, they could create a new story with a similar moral. Thirdly, they could say what happens next. So in this story, for example, does the elephant lie down with the Kingfisher and try to save the world, or does he go off laughing to himself? And finally, they could create a movie outline of the story. So who would play the elephant? Where would it be set? What music would they use? For the last of these three, they could work on their own, or they could work online with a classmate. And they could choose to present their work in a variety of ways: a poster, a PowerPoint presentation, audio, video recordings, etc. All of these activities encourage students to be creative, curious, think critically, as well as practice English. So I hope you enjoy your online storytelling with your students. Thank you for joining me today. Remember, you can find lots of other videos, resources and ideas at the Oxford University Press Learn at Home website.